luxury right at your fingertips. Sheer opulence.
Sheer opulence.
And welcome to Box Office Quarterbacks. I'm Ahmed, here with my good buddy Jeffrey Gordon. Jeff, what's up, man?
Not much, buddy. I am excited to talk with you again, as I always am. Excited to talk about this show with our boy Kumail Nanjiani, who is one of our favorite actors on this show. So I'm always going to be excited to talk about whatever project he does.
Yeah, Kumail plays an interesting character, and this is a true story. It's called Welcome to Chippendales, now streaming on Hulu. It's about an Indian immigrant named Soman, aka Steve Banerjee, who essentially started a male strip club for women. And Saturday Night Live, you guys are SNL fans. Chris Farley and Patrick Swayze did like a, dance off where Chris Farley showed off his keg right next to Patrick Swayze and his Adonis-like figure, and everyone loved it. But this true crime show kind of tackles the darkness behind that, kind of this Indian immigrant played by Kumail Nanjiani wanted to be the next Hugh Hefner, and you don't become Hugh Hefner and climb that ladder to success without, killing or, just the streets of success are paved with blood. Is that fair to say, Jeff?
I would say so. And I didn't know how dark this show got, but the end of the first episode was like extremely, extremely graphic and dark. And I had to look it up like right afterwards. And that's a true crime story. The murder of the Playmate of the Year and her husband, which is something covered on another podcast that me and my wife listen to, Morbid, which is a really good true crime podcast. They covered that as well. So building up this company is definitely a lot darker than I expected it to be.
Yeah, you think it's all about sex and everything, but that segues into what, our first impressions were. So aside from it being graphic, what else came to mind? Or what else were you going into?
Like, Kumail is just such a charismatic dude, and it carries over. Like, I loved him in Silicon Valley. I was so happy for him when he got cast in Eternals, and then he got buff and everything, and I was like, yes, this dude is like becoming an A-list Hollywood star, and it carries over here. I love the character of Steve. I just think that he's such an easy guy to root for, because it's a story about the American dream at the end of the day, and he wanted to carve out a path that was different from his family and to put himself on a level that nobody in his family had ever gotten to before. And I really love that aspect of it.
It's funny you say that, because it's like it's really portraying the American dream through the lens of an Indian American immigrant. But, aside from that, does this show that Kumail just has range as an actor as well?
I think so, because, most of the roles we've seen him in have been fairly comedic. I mean, he did The Big Sick, which was, I would say, his best movie still, where there was a lot of drama elements in that, but it was still played for laughs. So this is showing that he can carry probably an Oscar level movies sometime in the future, and really proves like what a leading man he really is.
Yeah, I love The Big Sick. And did you ever see the new Twilight Zone where he was in the first episode?
I didn't see that one.
For listeners, viewers, I would encourage you guys to watch the latest Twilight Zone. I think I got canceled with Jordan Peele as a narrator. Kumail is the main character in that first episode, and it's really amazing. And I thought seeing that so I wasn't surprised then, is what I'm trying to say, to see him have this dramatic role and to be so good at the role. But let's also talk about, the idea behind Chippendales. a male strip club or a strip club for women, like, does it still surprise you to know that something like this actually existed?
I mean, it definitely makes sense because just like they explained in the show, it was like there's so many strip clubs for men, uh, but there were none for women in a huge city like LA. Like it was only a matter of time before somebody capitalized on that. And I think that the staying power with Chippendales is it was kind of like Playboy, where they made it classier than they could have went. They brought in that choreographer that won the 2 Emmys for Unicorn Tales or whatever it was called, and then you classed it up and you made it something that would last instead of something raunchy that would maybe die out in a few years or a decade or something like that. So this story definitely has a lot of Hugh Hefner Playboy elements into it, I would say.
Do you think by making it classy, this kind of gives it a sort of, well, you did say staying power, but do you think it sort of portrays women in a more different light by saying you are equal? Because I'm doing a callback to that scene where they're at the club, and whenever Steve, played by Kumail Nanjiani, says to I'm forgetting her name, but the Playboy chick, when she says, "Newsflash: women get horny too." Does it seem like this was like, how powerful was that line, or what came to mind when you heard that?
I would say, like, I agreed that, hey, it shouldn't just be men that experience stuff like this. Like, women should have their own avenues with everything as well. It's just, uh, was this back in the 80s? It's just things weren't equal like that, even after everything that happened in history. But it was like the start of a renaissance because you have male strip clubs now. You have like other stuff geared towards women, and I think like Chippendales was a huge part in setting the ship in the right direction.
I think that had to be just my favorite scene. Just, you know, everything that she was in, everything that she was like, even the introduction of the bow ties. Did you have a favorite scene, Jeff? What was your favorite scene?
Honestly, I loved the back and forth between Steve and Dan Stevens' character, the husband in the first episode. Yeah, just the back and forth between them, and you could tell that Steve was kind of figuring out that this guy wasn't who he thought he was. Where he said he was this big time club promoter, and he really didn't know what the hell he was doing at the end of the day. So I loved that stuff and Steve figuring it out. I loved the chemistry between him and the accountant that he hired, who ends up becoming sort of like his love interest. Just that whole courtship, I thought was just a very sweet quality in a show that's full of dark elements as well.
So only 2 episodes have aired so far, and they've already unpacked so much. Do you think that the show will still be able to carry its own weight in the next few episodes?
I think so, just because true crime is such a huge thing these days, and just even characters that are huge in pop culture, like Hugh Hefner or somebody like that, they are heavily like publicized now. Where you got like the Marilyn Monroe story that came out this year, and then you got what else? Elvis. So people want to know history that came out in the last 30 years. And I honestly think that like the 80s is such an interesting time period that, yeah, definitely this is going to carry over. I think this is going to be a huge show for Hulu at the end of the day.
I'm glad you brought that up about the whole history thing because, as a historian myself, there's what happened and what people say happened. So I'm curious, how, should we take this show as an audience, knowing that maybe some of the details may be dramatized a little bit, or maybe they're painting one character as like a victim a little bit too much when we really shouldn't like them that much. You know, like the Jeffrey Dahmer effect, where you
Yeah.
kind of feel sorry for them in a way. I know that's how I felt with Narcos. You know what I mean?
Yeah, like you just got to take everything with a grain of salt these days, especially in Hollywood. Like Ford v Ferrari is another historical movie that comes to mind, where the main villain of that story was not the guy who we really knew in real life. The guy wasn't villainous or had any or ulterior motives like they painted him to. So things are going to get changed. Like Titanic is another one where there was no Jack and Rose on the Titanic in real life. That was all made up. It's just something you'd have to expect these days. And I think if you get the crux of the story right, the actual true life events, I think everything's fine. But yeah, you're just going to have to, like I said, go in with an open mind and do your own research after you're done watching it.
Definitely. But, you know, hopefully for some of us who are going to just enjoy the show, um, have we invested in any characters yet?
I mean, honestly, it's going to be Steve, and I sound like a broken record. Steve, 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 Steve. Um, and I should have the cast list pulled up in front of me, which, you know, I think I'm going to do right now. But
Well,
yeah, like Kumal
I,
is honestly like the cherry on top of all this stuff.
I want to kind of talk about the name that he picks because the first introduction scene is kind of what sort of humanizes Soman. You know, his name is Soman uh, Banerjee, but he goes by Steve because, you know, it's the 70s, the 80s. People are terrible people. And Steve is the best way for him to kind of just navigate through this racist civilization. And sadly, he starts to become sort of villainous in real life. And in the things that I've read about him, um, you know, a lot of people have their feelings about him. And I wonder how Kumail's gonna do because I love Kumail, but if he makes me hate his character, that's gonna really bug the crap out of me.
Yeah. Yeah, that's going to be an interesting turn. I haven't read ahead about what he did, but now I'm going to keep an eye out. And as soon as that switch flips, I'm going to be like, all right, that's what it is. I think my favorite character, though, is Otis. I
Oh yeah.
He's just like such a like he kind of just draws you in. You know, he's an actor and he's stripping for Chippendales now to provide for his wife and kids, but he like is trying to get into the money side of things too. I really just like respect the dude so far in this show. Like it's not all stripping and getting all the attention from women. It's more, hey, I want to provide for my family, and I really kind of gravitated toward that character. I would say he's my favorite. Nick DeNoia, the producer who won the 2 Emmys, he's another interesting character because I think he is not all what he seems either. Where you know he's doing the choreography and he played kind of hard to get hired onto Chippendales as well. I think there might be a more villainous, darker undertone to him moving forward as well.
I agree with you, and I think that yeah, Juliette Lewis, she every time she's also in Yellow Jackets, and she just has like a really good way. I'm sure she's an amazing person in real life, but she's got a good villainous look to her, like Willem Dafoe. So I wonder if they're going to do something with her character where they're going to make her kind of like I don't know Yoko in between them. You know what I mean?
I could see that coming, especially because
Yeah.
they like Nick went so out of his way to get her hired there too. Where he's like, if she's not working here, then I walk. And I was like,
And there's
you've known this lady for 10 minutes. You probably shouldn't do that, but you do you, buddy.
and the way they ended that episode where Kumail and that character, the other character, they're just kind of staring at each other with the, I see what you're doing. You see what I'm doing? Keep taking notes, you know? Like, or there was so much that was said in that awkward silence between the two.
Yeah, for sure.
Um, um, so let's just talk about overall ratings. What would you give this show so far?
So far through the first 2 episodes, I'd say it's probably a solid starter at this point. Like, it draws you in. It's definitely a good show. It doesn't have that wow moment for me yet where it's like, hey, this is a top-notch series that I'm going to remember forever. It's not there yet, but it is a great start, and I am excited to see where the season goes.
Definitely. I'm right there with you. I think it's a good starter show. I'm curious to see where they end up with. And, you know, it's only been 2 episodes. Um, but, I think with everything Kumail has done in the past, I think this is going to be his so far magnum opus. I think this will be like a defining role for him. Would you agree? Or do you think like I'm speaking a little too soon here?
Well, the good thing with TV, especially miniseries like this, is you get to spend more time with an actor. It was the same thing with Pam and Tommy earlier this year, which is also on Hulu. Sebastian Stan, I saw him in a completely different light after that, after he played Tommy Lee for 8 episodes or whatever it was. So, like, actors can definitely surprise you when you get to see them for 8 or 9 hours as opposed to 2 hours on the big screen.
Um, by being able to see a comedian or a comedy actor be able to portray someone in a serious role, would you argue that that takes more talent, or when a serious actor can be a comedian? Does that make
When a
sense?
comedic, yeah, like when a comedic actor goes serious, I respect it more because I mean, you've seen like Robert De Niro in Bad Grandpa or whatever the hell that movie is. It's like, I don't give a shit. Like, it is what it
Yeah,
is. And anybody can be funny if you really want them to be. To be a serious actor, it takes a lot more skill, especially if you don't come from that background.
I agree. So in that sense, do you think that if Kumail does such an amazing job in this role, that we might not be able to look at him the same way? And I mean this in all sincerity, but I'm reminded of Robin Williams in 1 Hour Photo.
Yeah, I mean, I think he could definitely go between both worlds, but I already think he's crossed over in a big way. Like, he's already, like, you look at the cast of Silicon Valley, and he is the one that has gotten to as close of an A list as we've gotten so far. Like, TJ Miller, his career is just fallen off a cliff, and then you have like Thomas Middleditch, who was like doing shows on CBS. Like, Kumal is the
Martin
one.
Martin
So
stars in the MCU too. I mean,
Martin Starr is in the MCU as Peter's teacher.
it's a small role, but
He,
he's there.
he's not the hero though. He ain't the hero.
No, he's just the hero's teacher.
Yeah.
uh, yeah. Jeff, is there anything else you want to bring up?
I'm excited to see the rest of the season. And yeah, I can't wait to see what's next.
And while you're on YouTube, make sure you subscribe. Make sure you check out all our other stuff. We have a website, boxofficeqbs.com. And just keep on staying tuned. We got so much coming at you, so much more stuff to share. But with that said, I'm Ahmed. He's Jeff. Thank you again for tuning in, and we'll hope to have more to share with you guys soon.